Class ninth, Chapter 9, Force and Law of Motion. In the previous chapter, we described the motion of an object along the straight line in terms of the position, velocity, and acceleration. We saw that such a motion can be uniform or non-uniform. We have not yet discovered that causes the motion. Why does the speed of an object change with respect allow the motion because that's what only रहेगा था ना project scientists and philosophers have around the world. It does not object. This event is late until Galileo and Isomorph time and developed the entire different of the motion. And the evaluating the observation required for the station object into motion after the motion of the ordinary experience. This is muscular effort and the soul must force a weight put on an object to change its state of motion. This concept of force is based on the level of force that is it impact of some distance force. However, by the feel like effect of the force we cannot explain by the describing object and directional balance and balance force of looting block horizontal double force of by the force of pulling step object to life in order to string and cross moves the delete with equal force and love is not outside force or balance force and not do not change state rest of motion in order to know that we consider to unknown positions. balance and balance force. So wooden block on horizontal table to start with y and the start to the two opposite force of the block of the will apply a force by pulling the string x and the block again to move the right. Similarly, we pull the state y and the block moves to the left. But if the block is pulled from both the sides with equal forces, the block will not move. Such forces are called balance force. Balance force and do not change the state rest of the motion of the object. Now let us consider a situation in which opposite forces of different force pull the block. In this case, the block would begin to move in the direction of the greater forces. Thus, the two forces are not balanced. And the unbalanced force act on the direction of the block moves. This suggests that unbalanced force acting on the object being in the motion. What happens when some children try to push the box with the small and the boxes are not moved because of friction. Because of friction acting on direction of opposite to push. फ्रिक्शन फोर्स क्या है? फोर्स के अपोजिट में अपोजिट डायरेक्शन ऑफ अपोजिट पुश this friction force between two surface in the contact between two surface of the contact two surface of the contact and yes of the bottom of the box floor is a rough surface it balance is pushing from the boxes do not move. The children push the box harder with the push does not move. This because the friction force still balance of the push force. If the children push the boxes harder, still the push force becomes bigger than the friction force. There is unbalanced force. The boxes which happen when the ride to bicycle when they stop pedaling the bicycle begin to slow down. This is again because of the friction force. Acting opposite to the direction of motion. Direction of friction force जो है opposite to the direction of the motion के opposite direction में काम करता है. Bicycle moving the start of pedaling again with the appear the object maintain of the motion under the continuous application. The under balance force Padding get object moving uniform velocity force pushing the force uniform of the object balance force not net balance and not net external force and not unbalanced force applied on the object will be change the other speed of the direction of the speed change the other not net external force. Acceleration move the object the unbalanced force required and the change in the speed direction of the motion will continue log unbalanced force is applied to now in this force. Remove completely the object would continue to move with the velocity it has required to gain first law of motion by observing the motion of an object and including plane Galileo deduced that object is a constant speed when the force acting them observe the marble falls down the inclined plane with its velocity increase. In the next chapter we will learn that the marble falls under the unbalanced force of gravity and therefore tend to the different velocity time that is atomic velocity. Its velocity decreases when climbs to frequency. That is marble distribution planes plane both sides Galileo and the when marble release roll down the slope and the opposite of the slide of the same height with the release from the side are the equal. Then the marble will climb the same distance that covered when rolling down. If the angle of inclination of the right side plane will gradually decrease, then the marble would travel further distance till they reach the original height. If the side by side planes where ultimately made of horizontal or the slope of reduce zero, and the marble continues to travel over the bridge of the same height of the release from the unbalanced force on the marble, in this case are zero. And the unbalanced external force required to retain the motion marble. No net force is needed to sustain the uniform marble. Practical situation different achieve is a zero unbalanced force. This is because the presence of the friction force is opposite to the direction of motion. Friction force acting on the direction of the opposite force. Thus, the friction marble is taken for the friction force minimized of the smooth and plane of the providing stop planes. Newton further teaches Galileo's ideas on the force of motion present three fundamental laws. Given motion object, these three laws are known as the Newton's law of motion. The first law of motion. The remain state of the uniform motion state line unless confusion the state applied of force. In other words, all objects resist a change of the state of motion. The quality weight tendency to undisturbed object stay the rest keep moving with the same velocity is called inertia. By first law of motion, we also know and law of inertia. First law of motion को law of inertia कहते हैं. हेलो दुबे जी, हाय. 9th का है. 9th chapter, force and law of motion. Certain experience that we come across while traveling in a motor car can be explained on the basis of the law of inertia. Certain experience that we come across while traveling in a motor car can be explained on the basis of the law of inertia. भाई हम खुद पढ़ रहे हैं, बिल्कुल पढ़ा देंगे, जितना आएगा तो बता ही देंगे. बाकी एक बार आप पढ़ के देखिए पहले, कोई दिक्कत है तो पूछिए. तो कोशिश करेंगे, अगर मुझे पता रहेगा तो बताएंगे ज़रूर. Cycle we can apply backwards to slow down the body of tendency to insane motion because inertia has certain application by example the injury of the Galileo was born on 15 February 1964 in Pisa, Italy. Galileo arrived from childhood and interest mathematics, natural philosophy. Father Galileo wanted him to become a medical doctor. According to Galileo, enrolled himself in medical degree of the University of Pisa 1581. Neither completed because of the real interest in mathematics. 1856 he wrote the first scientific book, the Little Balance, which also described Archimedes' method, finding the relative distance method of the balance and the 1589. This series is the motto mathematics slow down the state. 1552 he appointed professor mathematics at the University of Peru in the Republic, in which continued observation of the acceleration of the law of uniform acceleration of the distance of the person to the square of the time. Galileo, by the remarkable phenomenon of the telescope, who the performance than another telescope available out there on the first pendulum to survey messenger motion material. Funny teeny stars of the discovery on the floating bodies, discovery of the floating bodies, and later of the reading telescope and observe the Saturn and Venus, Galileo and its alpha on the impact or collision with the panel of the contraceptive wave. Found the prevent such incidents safely belt with our body to forward motion slower belt safety belt and opposite experience to encourage when the standing of the begin to move suddenly. Now we train to fall backward. This is because sudden start of the bus during motion to the bus as well as the feet contact or the floor of the bus. But the rest of our body opposes the motion because of its inertia. When motorcycles start and turn high speed into through the one side. And the basis of the law of inertia tend to continue the straight line motion when the unbalanced force applies in the direction of motion of the motorcycle using the law of inertia. The impact of the will remain at rest unless upon the unbalanced force and extension from activities. And the theorem point bottom of the page remove when the fast moving theorem point. The proof the superficial of prevent jerks. चैप्टर 3 में क्या मेन क्वेश्चन है भाई? पहले आप एक बार पढ़िए उनको ना, जब तक पहले खुद से नहीं पढ़िएगा तो कैसे समझ में आएगा कि क्या क्वेश्चन है नहीं है क्या है। पहले एक बार आप पढ़िए, उसके बाद कुछ दिक्कत होता है तो अगर पता all the example and activities give so far illustrate that there is resistance offered by the object to change its state of motion. If the rest tend to remain at rest, moving this property of an object called its inertia. All bodies have inertia. Do not either empty because of the similarly big kick equal ball is but kick stone of the same side of the equal force. It hardly moves the effect injury in our foot while doing certain activities. 5 2 points. We can use the one to find. We find that laser force equal to perform the activity of force that is just enough to cause a small percentage of a large velocity will produce an invisible charge in a motion in a stream. This is because comparison of part of the stream such as laser tendency to the motion according to velocity and of the environment side clearly the of the massive object allows the inertia quantity readings are measured by the mass. It may be rated inertia and mass for inertia. Nature tends to the object and the motion of the mass of the object measures inertia. Second law of motion. The first law of motion dictated when the unbalanced exert force on the object is velocity change its object get acceleration. Acceleration of an object depends on the force. Let us recount some observations from the everyday life. During the game of the table tennis, when the ball hits a player, it does not hurt him. On the other hand, when a fast moving cricket ball is expected, it may hurt him. Drug arrest does not require an park along the side, but the moment given a speed of the law by the kill person stand path of the small mouse with the bullet of the kill. When the kills of the gun, these observations suggest that the impact produced the suggested depend on their passage velocity similarly to the object acceleration. Force gives a greater velocity, other words refer to the circle the impact climbs and affects mass velocity by the moment called momentum induced by the Newton momentum of the P mass and the velocity P barabar mv. Momentum has both direction of magnitude. Direction that is velocity. SI unit of momentum is kilometer per second. SI unit of momentum kilometer per second. SI unit kilometer per second. Since application of the unbalanced force during change the velocity of an object, therefore clear that they also produce change of momentum, change of direction, change of momentum. Let us consider situation of the car, dead battery of the first along the straight road of the given speed of 1 meter per second, which sufficient of the straight number among the two persons give a sudden push unbalanced force that is hardly start but a continuous push over some times result in a gradual acceleration of the car. Is this produces remain that the change of momentum on the car not only determined by the magnitude of the force but also by the time during which the force is external. It may be then also considered of the force necessary to change the momentum of the object depends on the time rate of the momentum it is changed. The second law of motion. That the change of momentum rate of change of momentum object proportional to the applied of unbalanced force of the direction. Second law of motion. Rate of change of momentum proportional object is proportional to the applied of unbalanced force applied to the unbalanced force to the direction of force in the direction of force. Direction of force. Mathematical formula for the second law of motion. Suppose the motion is straight line with the initial velocity u is the unfortunate resisted velocity v time t and the application of constant force F through the time with the initial momentum of the particle proportional to ma acceleration. Here a constant acceleration which rate of change of velocity the quantity of k with a constant proportional SI unit of mass of acceleration of kg meter per second. The acceleration force so does not the value of constant k is become the force unit of force different the amount of produced as the acceleration on kg 1 minute of force is meter per barabar ml. This is force kilometer per Newton the symbol and second law of motion. Motion gives us method of measure the force acting on object produce its mass and acceleration. The second of motion often seen in everyday life. We notice the change rate of the cricket ball. One of the gradually hands backward with the ball to fielder attack. Fielder increase to the rate of the high velocity moving ball decrease to the zero. The acceleration of the ball decreases. Therefore, impact of the fast moving ball it reduces. Stop the suddenly of the high velocity decreases to the zero in the very short interval of time. The rate of change of momentum ball will large, therefore large force of the applied on the pitch but hard upon the jumped athlete made a fall on the cushion and bed on the sand bed is increase the time athlete foot stop making the jump Correct player breaks the slab of ice with the single blow. So the first law of motion can be mathematically registered as mathematical expression. Second law of motion equation F बराबर ma, F बराबर ma, F बराबर force acceleration बढ़ेगा. Acceleration v minus u by t mv to u v minus u. Time to take a major object continue moving uniform velocity u to the time 0. And also the zero object remain rest object will be rest. इसके बाद यहाँ पूरा एग्जाम्पल दिया हुआ है. थर्ड law of motion. The two laws of motion are applied force change of motion provides the method determine the force. And the third law of motion is object force another object. Second object mutually calculated force by the first. These two forces always equal to the magnitude but opposite in direction. Therefore, the different objects never are the same object. In the game of football, sometimes we will look at the football and try to kick the greater force applied the player of the opposite team. Both feel hard because the applied force is the force, but their pair of forces does to opposite force, also known as action and reflection force. Two spring balance connected together, so the balance for the rigid support like wall and applied to the spring balance. It is about the reaching of the sense scale man the aspect of the spring balance. Opposite direction of the force. It is balance of the balance. Therefore, balance is a balance called the action and force of the balance. Balance is called the reaction. Step gives the section. Third law of motion. That is every action there is equal to the opposite reaction. Every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Every action there is equal and opposite reaction. However, it must be remembered that action and reaction always act on different object. ये क्वेश्चन बहुत पूछता है. That action and reaction always act on two different objects. Action and reference to different objects. That action and reaction always act on two different objects. Suppose that the standing at rest and the inertia of the walking on the road must accelerated and require the force of acceleration. Second law of motion. View force motion effects of the road and direction of the inertia with the backward below road aspect equal to opposite direction of the foot of the motor. The note of the action and the reaction force always equal to the magnitude. Force not push acceleration equal to the magnitude. Balance is the different mass. When a gun is fired with extra force, a bullet with extra force in opposite direction, opposite reaction force a gun. This result recall a gun with a sensor has the greater mass than bullet. Acceleration the law of acceleration and bullet. The third law of motion and illustrated on the senior jumps rolling boat as the senior jumps forward boat and backwards. Now place a two different cart of the another second law of motion can be seen arranged with the two different acceleration force as the same force. Different acceleration for the same force. The cards show down the activity can be illustrated. Bottom thick plywood with the about pair of the ball wheels. Ball of the effort different maintain of the state of motion. नाव पे देते हैं इधर वो इधर खोल लगाता है तब आगे बढ़ता है. Conservation of momentum. Suppose two balls A and B, the mass A and B are traveling to the same direction along the straight line. Same direction, straight line, different velocity A and AB respectively. There is no external unbalance force acting on them. Let us the ball collide. During the collision, let us the ball cross B and or the ball of the suppose B and B are velocities of the two balls A and B after collision respectively. ये भी इसमें मिल गया ये अपोजिट. The momenta plural of momentum after the collision ma and ua and maua respectively. The rate of change of momentum during collision will be estimated rate of change of momentum ball reaction of collision. According to the third law of motion, the F exactly ball AB and a force B exerted by the ball on reflection will be equal to the opposite to the other force. F बराबर F minus F since total momentum of two balls, therefore collision MB plus MB is a total momentum after the collision. Total momentum after the collision. And observe that the total momentum of the two balls remain unchanged, conserved provided the external force acts. As a result, ideal collision experiment. There is a sum of momenta of two objects before collision equal to the sum of momenta two objects before collision. For two objects before collision equal to the sum of momenta after the collision provided there are no external unbalanced force acting them, known as the law of conservation of momentum. This statement can alternately be the total momentum of the two objects is unchanged or conserved by the collision. Law conservation laws. All conservation such as conservation of momentum, energy, angular momentum, and charge. It's considered the fundamental laws of physics. The based on observation experiment important the conservation of laws cannot be observed. Experiment important recommendation are provided to verify the full experimentation result. The law of experiment of laws provide the laws. On the other hand, single experiment result to the next law enough provides. Law of conservation of momentum has deduced from the large number of observation experiments. The law promoted nearly three contexts consisting of the situation realized the context concept of the basis of law of conservation of momentum. Conservation of momentum, energy, angular momentum, charge and charge. Conservation of energy, angular momentum, charge. First law of motion, an object continues to be the state of rest, uniform motion along a straight line unless act upon the unbalanced force. Natural tendency to the resistance there is rest to unbalanced motion called inertia. Law of most measure its inertia as unit of kg. Force of friction always opposite to the object. ये इम्पोर्टेंट है. Force is friction always opposite motion of object. Force of friction opposite always opposite motion of object. Second law of motion, rate of change of momentum is object proportional to applied unbalanced force direction of force. सेकंड लॉ मोशन क्या कहता है, रेट ऑफ चेंज ऑफ मोमेंटम, रेट ऑफ चेंज ऑफ मोमेंटम ऑफ एन टू द ऑब्जेक्ट डायरेक्शन प्रोपोर्शनल अनबैलेंस फोर्स एंड द डायरेक्शन ऑफ फोर्स, डायरेक्शन ऑफ फोर्स. एस आई यूनिट ऑफ के जी मीटर पर सेकेंड, के जी मीटर पर सेकेंड, ऑल्सो कॉल्ड न्यूटन एंड रिप्रेजेंटेड बाय द सिंबल एन. द फोर्स ऑफ न्यूटन प्रोड्यूस एक्सेलरेशन. फोर्स ऑफ न्यूटन इज प्रोड्यूस एक्सेलरेशन 1 meter object 1 kg 1 meter is momentum of the object produce its mass velocity in the same direction with the velocity of the same kg meter per second. Velocity same direction of the velocity, change of velocity. Third law of motion, to every action is equal to the opposite reaction. They can two different bodies. Isolation system, total momentum remains conserved. Total momentum remains conserved. Total momentum remains conserved. Total momentum conserved. Force of friction, law of opposite and the motion of objects. Rate of momentum of the object, unbalanced force, direction of motion, kilometer per second, kilometer per Newton. That action and reaction always acts on two different bodies. That action and reaction always act on two different bodies. Third law of motion क्या है, action and reaction always act on two different bodies means opposite in direction. Third law is opposite in direction, action and reaction force, opposite force, two opposite force known as action and reaction force. Two opposite force, action and reaction force, action and reaction force. सेकंड ऑफ लो मोशन में ये टाइम को बढ़ाकर फोर्स एक्सेलरेशन को कम किया जाता है. टाइम को बढ़ा के एक्सेलरेशन को कम किया जाता है. मोमेंटम change momentum large force will be applied holding catch of the hard form and of the ball decrease. Acceleration of the ball is decrease. बॉल का एक्सेलरेशन को क्या करते हैं, डिक्रीज करते हैं टाइम को इंक्रीज करके बॉल के एक्सेलरेशन को डिक्रीज करते हैं तो हाथ में चोट नहीं लगता है. वेलोसिटी मूविंग बॉल डिक्रीज टू जीरो, डिक्रीज करके जीरो कर देते हैं. वेलोसिटी हाई वेलोसिटी को डिक्रीज करके जीरो कर देते हैं और टाइम को बढ़ा देते हैं. टाइम बढ़ेगा तो उसका वेलोसिटी जो है कम हो जाएगा, जीरो हो जाएगा तो चोट नहीं लगेगा. यहीं पे अगर एक्सेलरेशन को टाइम को घटा देंगे तो क्या होगा, वेलोसिटी बढ़ जाएगा तो हाथ में चोट लगेगा. डिक्रीज रेट ऑफ चेंज मोमेंटम, सो डिक्रीज ऑफ चेंज मोमेंटम को चेंज करते हैं, मोमेंटम को भी चेंज करते हैं. F बराबर एम ए उसका फॉर्मूला था. F बराबर एम ए फोर्स ऑन एम कांस्टेंट एक्सेलरेशन. फोर्स बढ़ेगा तो एक्सेलरेशन भी बढ़ेगा, फोर्स भी बढ़ेगा. फोर्स को बढ़ाएंगे तो एक्सेलरेशन भी बढ़ेगा. चलिए चैप्टर आज ख़त्म. फोर्स ऑफ मोशन, न्यूटन का थर्ड लॉ ऑफ मोशन, फर्स्ट ऑफ मोशन, सेकंड लॉ, थर्ड लॉ. Two inertia unbalanced fault. अपोजिट डायरेक्शन ऑफ द मोशन। चलिए, तो 9th चैप्टर आज ख़त्म हो गया। फिर इसको 2-3 दिन में ख़त्म करना है। उसके बाद 10th क्लास पढ़ना है। उसके बाद अगला चैप्टर है ग्रेविटेशन है। उसके बाद क्या सब बचे, ग्रेविटेशन है, उसका वर्क एंड एनर्जी है, साउंड है, वाई डू वी फॉल ऑन नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज, इम्प्रूवमेंट ऑफ फूड, लॉ मोशन हो गया है। ग्रेविटेशन को आज ही ख़त्म करना है। आज ग्रेविटेशन को पढ़ेंगे 3-4 बजे के आसपास। उसके बाद बचेगा वर्क एंड एनर्जी है, साउंड, इसको कल ख़त्म करते हैं। उसके बाद ख़त्म होगा, उसके बाद 10th क्लास पढ़ेंगे। चलिए, तो ठीक है, फिर मिलते हैं शाम में नेक्स्ट चैप्टर में।